Hello, welcome. The WWU Marketing Department and the WWU Alumni Association are excited to welcome you to today's webinar, Content Marketing Trends in 2022. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Dr. Mark Staten, Associate Professor of Marketing here at Western Washington University. I've been teaching our undergraduate course in digital marketing since 2013. And we've been talking about content marketing in the course since the beginning. It's a constantly evolving tool, and which makes it a really interesting topic. Today, we're going to talk about content marketing for everyone, from experts to newbies. So we're excited to welcome our panelists today, who are all WWU alums. They want to turn on their cameras. We got Hamza Abu Amo, is a digital content marketing specialist at Fixture Media, who's focused on effectively communicating, engaging, and reaching people. We've got Sydney Bollinger. She's the Chief Marketing Officer for Bible Project, which is a crowd-funded nonprofit that makes free animated videos and resources to help people experience the biblical story. Prior to that, she worked at Nike and at Oregon's largest winery, Union Wine Company. And finally, we have Jill Unruh. She's digital content manager at Lifetime Brands, which is a leading global provider of kitchenware, tableware, and other products for the home. Previously, she worked in the outdoor industry for Thermarest and MSR Gear, as well as the Gottman Institute, which is a relationship research institute. She's passionate about brand storytelling and performance to create and curate highly compelling and engaging content. So a little housekeeping before we dive in. Some of you have submitted questions with your registration, and we really appreciate those. Thank you so much. We'll try to get through as many of them as we can. As we move through our discussion today, please use the Zoom Q&A feature, which should be at the bottom of or bottom middle of your screen, to send us any questions that may come to mind. And so we'll be responding to those questions throughout the discussion today as we're able to. All right, so let's just get into it. So first, this is gonna be a question for all of our panelists, but how do you explain content marketing to like colleagues or grandparents who are not familiar with it? I'll start with Hamza.
Hello, everyone. Content marketing, it's a very interesting topic. I think people have very different ideas about what content is, and for a very good reason. I think it varies from everywhere, like content on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, to blog posts, visuals, illustrations on clients' websites and different brands. And I think the main goal of what content marketing does for a brand or for a client is that it delivers a story behind what product or service you're trying to sell, and trying to reach a consumer or a person that's trying to use their service on a more personal level beyond just a consumer. And I think that's how I approach it personally in my own practice with Fixture Media.
Cool, that was a great answer. Thank you. Jill, how about you? How do you explain content marketing to people who aren't familiar with it?
I keep it simple and just tell friends and family, basically anything that you're seeing that is from a brand online, I probably had a role to play in that, whether it's the website, the graphics, videos, blog, social, I played a role in that.
Just anything. That's it. Anything and everything. That's what content marketing is. I like that.
Basically.
Yeah, Sydney, how about you? How do you explain what content marketing is?
Yeah, I think an easy way that I think about it is actually what it's not, which it's not like traditional marketing where you have, a megaphone and you're shouting your company's value to an audience. You're actually think about sitting next to someone and hearing their needs and giving them something that may directly impact them. That yes, it's branded, and yes, we hope there's reciprocity, but it's truly a gift without needing something necessarily in return. And yes, sometimes you do give your email address and such, but at the end of the day, you're giving the audience value as your first impression, which I think is a really, really powerful thing to do in this day and age.
Yeah, that's great. No, that makes a lot of sense. So one of the things I say in the digital marketing class a lot is that digital marketing has a lot of TLAs, and TLA stands for 3-letter acronyms. And so one of the most important TLAs is KPI for key performance indicator. So what kind of KPIs do you use to determine the success of a particular content marketing campaign? Let's start with Sydney.
So good. I really think it depends, of course, on what your goal is and what your hope that this asset or piece of content would achieve. But I really like to nerd out on things like if it's a video, looking at the view duration rate, looking at did people actually watch it all the way through, and kind of getting away from vanity metrics. You got to be really careful with Facebook nowadays, because it can show a view, but someone only watched like a second. So trying to see, did someone engage with this and actually take action? Did they share it? Did they download it? Did they take a next step? Because I feel like that's really marketing's purpose, inviting someone to take one next step.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. Yeah, sort of those micro conversions. I like that.
Yeah.
Jill, how about you? What are some of the metrics you use?
Yeah, and to add on that, what we look at a lot is how many touch points does it take to get a user to convert. Every single company I've been at, it's been totally different. When I was in the outdoor industry, our ads were indicating that it took 24 interactions before someone would convert, versus currently it's 6 for my current brand. So that's a really interesting one that I like to look at. It kind of reminds you that it's a long-term strategy. You're not just looking at ROAS immediately. There's a lot more that goes into ROAS.
Can you say what ROAS is again?
Yeah, return on ad spend.
Return on ad spend. Okay, that's good. Yeah.
Speaking of acronyms.
Yeah, exactly. That's a 4-letter one. That's totally different.
Yeah, cut you off guard.
Yeah, it's okay. How about you, Hamza? What sort of metrics do you use?
I think in the at the agency that I work at, we deal with a lot of like blog posts and trying to reach consumers through blog posts. And I think one thing that we really focus on to determine how successful a campaign is seeing how many link placements we got at a certain website or a certain client that we reach out to place our link there. And another major key that we also look at is domain authority and how we rank when someone looks up the name of a brand that we work for. Is if it's the first result that comes up on Google, we consider that a win. So.
Okay, so again, one of the things that we're talking specifically about content marketing, but content marketing is part of sort of the larger digital marketing ecosystem, and a huge part of digital marketing is search engine optimization. And so that's what Hamza is referring to in terms of how does the, a lot of times if your content is good, it will actually improve your organic search engine results, and that's really, really, really effective. So yeah, this is great. This is all sort of different ways to look at this. Next thing, how do you see content marketing, its role? I mean, is it something that is more about a customer acquisition, lead generation, first impression tool, or is it something that you use throughout the customer journey? Hamza, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, I think the very generic answer that marketers tend to use is, again, it depends. I think with different brands and different clients, we tend to like focus on it or view it in a different way. I think for me, I view it as something that we use throughout the customer journey. I think it's important to look at content marketing, as Sydney mentioned, as something that you offer the consumer beyond just trying to sell them a service or a product. I think it's important to view content marketing as a tool that you get to reach a person that's trying to interact with your brand in a way that's like, we look at you as a person that's valuing the product and the service that we're offering, and we want to extend this extra service of providing you with more services and more content for you to make use out of, in a way that doesn't feel like I'm trying to get something out of you for using it. So I think the way I view it, at least in the limited experience I've had in the industry so far, is definitely something to look at as something you use throughout your customer journey.
Yeah. I mean, I talk about it all the time in terms of the whole process. I've made a couple of references to this on LinkedIn. Today's my birthday. And so I used I looked at my Gmail and I got a free coupon from Starbucks for a birthday drink today. That's content marketing. I mean, it's email is a huge tool in terms of customer customer retention. Email is a great tool for that, and email is a huge part of content marketing. So actually, before we get to the next thing, Sydney, we had a really good question from Jacob about viewing duration rate. Do you have an answer for that, Sydney?
Yeah. I just wanted to say you can totally find that stuff in YouTube. Some of the social channels don't have that ability, but platforms that are a bit more established, like YouTube, should have that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. VTD, another acronym,
another TLA. So many TLAs. So first question from that was submitted by the audience. What's the best way to do content marketing on a budget? Like what's the best sort of best ways that you could do inexpensive content marketing? What are some sort of quick case studies about things that you've done? Sydney, you got some thoughts?
Yes, I love this quote I read recently. Sales talks about features, marketing talks about benefits. It blew my mind. So simple, but I really think no matter your budget, you can totally just spend your time capturing why your product matters to potential customers and spend your time there. And so there's a really cool resource called StoryBrand that basically lays out a script that you can use to really make your audience or customer the hero, that I have used at every job I've had, and has I've just seen so much success come from being customer first when you create content. And then you can, make some white papers, work with a designer, build things that are of value to your audience. So.
Yeah, if we think a lot of times, a lot of the things I've learned about content marketing and inbound marketing, I've learned from HubSpot. HubSpot is a inbound marketing software platform, and one of the things they talk about is really thinking about buyer personas and who are you trying to serve, who are you trying to attract, and what's the content that they're looking for. So that makes a lot of sense. Jill, is there some interesting stuff you've done? Thanks, Ed, I appreciate that. So is there some stuff that you've done on a budget, Jill, that you've been really proud of?
Yeah, I think the easiest thing to do is work on building a community. At the Gottman Institute, we didn't have ad spend. It was all organic. And that really was through building trust. And really reaching out and getting a community. So sometimes that meant forming a group with mom bloggers who shared emotion coaching materials that resonated with work that we did at the Gottman Institute. Reaching out to other therapists and forming Facebook groups so that people felt connected to the brand, sharing free resources. We started an email marketing segmented campaign that was every Tuesday. We just sent out, it was called the Marriage Minute, where we give advice on your marriage. It's just a quick little snippet, 1 minute of your week that helps build strength and trust in your relationships. So I think it's really just forming connections and really giving rather than expecting to receive in that.
Yeah, I actually remember talking to Jill when she was at Gottman before. And one of the things that, content marketing on a budget that makes a lot of sense is the concept of evergreen content. So, what are the pieces of content that you can actually reuse just with some sort of tweaks in terms of making them a little more current? And actually, that's one of the great things about digital marketing is this idea of, with Google Analytics, we can really see which pieces of content have really driven conversions. And then we just sort of update and tweak those pieces of content regularly to sort of, maximize the return on those.
Yeah, it's really easy to just take a blog post, take a little snippet or quote, pop it into Canva. I know any designer is going to cringe at me saying that, but that is a free resource that so many people use to create content that scales.
Hamza, do you have any sort of content marketing on a budget tips that you've come across?
I think the nature of the position that or the company that I work at doesn't allow me to engage in the creativity of making content on a budget. We work directly with clients. We give them what they're looking for, and they deal with the marketing, like of where to place it and how to handle it themselves. But one thing that I've noticed, we have a client. It's a mid-sized welding company. I've spoken to the owner multiple times on meetings, and one thing that he tends to do is sometimes he sends welding machines for free to content makers, like on YouTube, or welders on YouTube, or people just that are a fan of the product. And just because they express their gratitude, or because he wants people to spread the word around about the company, he sends welders, he sends like coupons, discounts, and I realize that's not really on a budget, but I think that goes to the point that Jill was trying to drive, is that building a community behind your product and your service goes a long way. And I think it's one of the stronger ways to build a community and market yourself.
Got it.
Yeah.
And someone has a siren somewhere. That's not the first time that's happened on Zoom. So the next question. So like I was saying before about teaching the class, this stuff changes all the time. So what are some of the resources that you, as content marketing professionals, refer to regularly to sort of keep up with the latest and greatest trends? You want to start, Sydney?
Yes, I think this, as you guys, I think a lot of you here are students. The key is to stay a student. I learned this after the first couple of years into my career, how important it was to keep that student mindset, especially with the world of digital marketing. There's a whole conversation going on right now about privacy and Facebook, getting rid of a lot of the super targeted, ad types we've had in the past. Like everything is changing. And if you're not keeping up, it's really hard to, feel like you're at the front of the class, so to speak. And so my tips or ways to just stay ahead of the curve is follow really smart people on LinkedIn and Twitter. It's just amazing the accessibility to such smart minds. Everyone's putting out a podcast right now. So finding really good people to follow in that space, and also just keeping a really flexible mindset and being open to change and trying new things and being on social media in a regular, healthy way and trying out all the new features. And I think it's really cool to see how these social media platforms, they really push, they want their new features to take off. Like YouTube Shorts is trying to really take on, the TikTok space. And so we've seen really great success in doing what the current platform is trying to push. So.
Yeah, no, actually, Sydney spoke to my class a couple of weeks ago, and she made a really good point. This sort of ties back into the sort of content marketing on a budget thing, that a lot of these large platforms, when they put out a new feature, the people that use that will see the algorithm will really reward that as they try to get more people to use that feature. So keeping track of those things is really, really helpful. Jill, how about you? How do you keep up to date on content marketing trends?
Yeah, when it comes to Instagram, I follow the CMO on Instagram because he's always releasing all the new updates. Like when he announced that Instagram was going to be a video first platform, that kind of shocked everyone, like, whoa, this came out of nowhere. But because I follow him, I was able to like get that news really fast. So following leaders of the company as they release it. I also really love following influencers themselves. They're often the first ones to really make that quick pivot and quick switch. And there's certain ones that you can find that will share their metrics, and they'll be like, hey, I got this many views on my reels when they introduced it. This is what I get on my posts. I think I'm going to start moving towards this. I'll let you guys know how it goes. So following leaders in like the influencer space that are willing to share their successes.
Do you have any names that you could, like, old people would know or would know?
I actually, there's one person I recently found. TikTok is also an amazing resource. I kind of went down that rabbit hole during quarantine, like many people. One of my favorite new people that I found, she is the founder of this activewear company called Set Active. Her name is Lindsay Rachel, I believe. And she posts exactly how she runs her company on her private TikTok. She goes into like their brand guidelines, how they go over that, email marketing. So she's a really interesting person on the cusp that I've been really enjoying following from and learning from as a content marketer, and kind of just like, again, being a lifelong student, what Sydney said. And specifically in terms of short video, one thing that we've been doing as a brand is creating longer videos and then having it edited and chopped up into smaller videos and testing out with our ads, whether like what duration of videos people that are engaging with us are actually staying for. And what we found is it's between 6 seconds and 15 seconds personally.
That's really short. That seems really short, but like that can still be very effective. Hamza, how have you stayed a lifelong learner?
Well, given the fact that I graduated August 2020, I think one thing that I've really learned, and I think these are the thing I'm about to say is something that Sydney and Jill have both touched on. And I think one thing that I really found value in is following the Content Marketing Institute. They have their own newsletter, they have their own website, they hold panels like this one, they hold webinars. I've attended a few of them and they're very, very valuable and they're free, which is really nice. And I think that's kind of been my major kind of source for keeping up with new trends and catching things at the beginning of it. And yeah, I think that's my limited take on this.
Yeah, Content Marketing Institute is great. I actually went to an in-person seminar they did on Whidbey Island several years ago, and it was really, really well done. And so they have a lot of really good resources there on trends and things like that. Here's a question for Jill. So how has the COVID pandemic affected your marketing strategies? Like, specifically to sort of specific, in addition to specific changes, how has it impacted the overall tone of how you communicate your message? I mean, are we still in this, like, in our challenging times, ... or like, are we...
unprecedented times.
In our unprecedented, that was the word, yeah.
Yeah, I think every single marketing individual use that word once a week. So when the pandemic hit, I was working for Planet Box, which is a stainless steel lunchbox company. So as you can imagine, everything changed because no one was in school anymore. No one needed lunch boxes.
You still need a lunch box for your
kitchen plate at home, So we really kind of had to take a step back. I think we changed our April marketing plans like 4 or 5 times within like 2 weeks. It was one of the craziest times of my career. And what we went back to was we personally as a company being like eco-friendly, like sustainable, we wanted to make sure that while we were selling product, we were also giving back. And so we had an initiative and reached out to No Kid Hungry and partner with them to make sure that kids were still getting meals while they weren't in school. So kind of bringing it back to like our brand, what do we do? What is our purpose in our pillars of content? And how can we still give back to the community in like a very dire time of need? And then also just going back to, you know, after April, when we started getting into a groove of like, okay, this is going to be a while. And we really need to change our back to school plans now too, because it doesn't look like this is happening. So we kind of went back and looked at different pillars of content that we focus on, you know, like what's our value? What are we trying to like, what problems are we solving now that we are in a pandemic? And one of them was, you know, kids really needed routine still. That was something that most parents were really telling us, that they were really struggling with providing routine and structure that the school day provided for them. And so we can help with that because, you know, you can prepare your lunchbox still ahead of time, just like you would for school any other day. They're just eating it at the kitchen table now instead of at school with their friends. So we really focused on what is it that our customers needed at that moment, and kind of realized that our sales are going to take a hit, and we have to just understand that. Secondly, we took it as an opportunity to get to know our customers better. We sent out a survey and tried figuring out why it is that they stayed with us for so many years, how many years they've had a lunchbox from us. And then additionally, another brand that I work on is Rabbit Wine. So business started booming there, quite the opposite. So we started focusing more on like, hey, it's okay, you can have your like nightly cap at home still. And just the importance of like, hey, now you need bar tools because you still want your fancy cocktail, like no need to deprive yourself on that. So we started focusing on content of like, cocktails to make at home, people not being as, you know, intimidated by like being a mixologist on their own. Yeah, I don't.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think the key is to just to you know, don't think of your content as separate from the world. You know, don't think, you know, just, you know, it's you know, reacting to what's happening, you know, makes for sort of fresher, more engaging content, and that's what we're trying to achieve.
Right. And I think to Sydney's point again earlier of, you know, really listening to what your customers want, I think a lot of people make assumptions. Don't be afraid to ask, like ask your customers, what do you need from us right now? Like give them a little poll on social media to click on. What are you most interested in? They'll tell you, you don't need to guess.
Right. No, that's great. So Sydney, here's a question for you. How can people use content marketing in terms of sort of recruiting employees? Have you seen sort of some good ways to try and do that? Because I would imagine it would be a pretty effective tool for that.
Yeah. So we know it's really, as a lot of us know, it's really hard to find great talent right now, but there's also this opportunity of, I don't know if you guys have noticed, but on LinkedIn, there's people making crazy job shifts. Like there's just been a lot of change, I feel like, in the last 2 years, like people at a job for like 17 years and they're looking for new opportunities. And so the biggest thing, I guess I could simply say is I've loved these little videos hiring managers are making, just simple DSLR camera, introducing themselves, sharing what this person would do on the team and kind of giving them a taste of what they're like as a boss. So I think that's a really great opportunity, as well as using tools like Glassdoor that are they're just taking off the transparency of what's it really like to work here. And just a lot of personalities on LinkedIn. I've just seen so much engagement with really fun hiring managers sharing things about their role and just the cool connections that people are making.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's one of the great tools of content marketing generally is, you know, is creating content that lets people see, you know, sort of behind the curtain. And so, and like Sydney said, transparency is something that's valued by a lot of potential employees. And so the more transparency you can, sort of the more that you can have in your content about why this is a good place to work, I think that would be a much more effective form of content marketing for employers. Good job. So good question, person from the audience. This is a question for Hamza. How do you develop a content strat? So interestingly, Hamza, he works for an agency. And so he has a lot of different clients. How do you develop a content strategy while working in partnership with a pretty well-known or well-established business? Sort of specifically, how can you maintain and honor their image while still sort of helping them improve and optimize their content marketing?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I think it's a challenge, or it's a process that both parties have to play a factor in. I think it's the client's responsibility to come to us with their tone, their guidelines, their writing styles, all the material that they have to give us, to be able to provide to them something that they can look at and be like, yes, this is something that we would make ourselves and put out there for people to consume. And I think that on our end, I think it's our responsibility to take that, look at it, and be the agency, like what we offer as an agency, come back to them and tell them, well, this is all good. This is how we could use this in this certain manner. And we come back with keyword analyses. We come back with all these different things that we research for them, being that's our job for like what they pay us to do. And basically tell them we can adopt all of these things, all of these factors, and give you back this product that will align with your message, with what you're trying to deliver to the consumer. And I think it's a back and forth process of making something, sending it over, getting some notes, getting it back, until we perfect this tone that they're looking for, and giving them something from the get-go that they can look at and be like, yes, this is something that we can put out there and call our own.
It's iterative. Dare I say it's about optimization, to use another marketing word. And so and they're the client is asking you because of your expertise in content marketing, but you need to make sure that the client feels like that this represents them. And so I mean, I think that's a really good question, but I think the sort of the short answer is just to work together is probably the important part. Jill, we touched on this with a previous question, but in these unprecedented times, we do have some, there are issues that brands feel like a lot of customers expect their brands to take a stand. And a way that they can take a stand is within their content marketing. So how do you, as for your clients or for yourself, how do you deal with political issues in your content marketing? You want to start, Sydney?
Yes. Insert hot topic, insert, doesn't even have to be political. Just everything right now is very divisive. And it's been crazy to see, for the first time in my career, a lot of brands say something that maybe they wouldn't have said in the past or whatever. But I have some really fun tips from learning the hard way. It's really hard in marketing to essentially be at the ground level, boots on the ground when these things happen. And then you're like panic mode. I need to talk to executives. Like, what are we going to say about this or that? And so my words to the wise would be to do some pre-work, like start to prepare for these potential things, work with your executive team and leadership in a calm state to develop plans about potential scenarios that could happen. Ask the question, what is our mission and what do we talk about? What do we talk about? What's our boundaries? I think those are really helpful to establish. So when something does come up, you're like, oh yeah, we don't wade into that, even though it's so hard in the moment when you're just like, do we need to send a tweet about this thing? You can rest confident kind of looking at your plans and all the pre-work you did to prepare for that moment. Just like a firefighter lays out a strong strategy before they go to a scene, and then they do what they know in a really stressful situation. So
that makes sense. So plan before and really consider and always have the mission in mind is a good is a good thing.
Seek wise counsel. You're not alone.
Yeah, exactly. It's no weakness to ask for help.
No.
Jill, how about you? Do you have any thoughts on sort of political issues in terms of content marketing?
Yeah, definitely plan in advance. You will need to take a stance on something at some point, regardless of what company you're working for, what political leanings you might have as a company or individual. I also think that a lot of your brand values help guide you, especially when we were in the outdoor industry. You know, anything environmental is really easy to hit on. Obviously, that impacts our line of work. So we knew right out of the gate, like anything that involves that issue, we're going to talk about. Secondly, if it is slightly outside of your scope of what your brand does, but you as a company feel driven to speak up about it, I think it's really important to maybe not speak from the brand, but find someone who comes from a leadership background that can shed more light on it. And you're giving that person a voice through your brand rather than your brand speaking and saying like, we know best, because oftentimes you don't. So I think reaching out to your community and amplifying other people's voices is really important.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Hamza, you got anything to add on that? Have you had any sort of political things that come up with your content marketing?
I mean, with the nature of my work, we have the barrier of basically delivering the content to the client and they decide what they want to do with it. But I think on our end, we have a duty to kind of take every political issue that comes at hand with like pretty seriously, and we tend to approach things in a way that's like, well, does this align with the service that we're providing? And ultimately, it's the brands, the client that we work with, it's their call on what they want to publish or what they want to put out there. But it's definitely my duty as the person making the content, or making something to them to approach it from a standpoint of like, these are the issues that are currently happening, whatever they need to address, or whatever type of content they're trying to come up with. This is what you should be aware of. And not everyone's going to agree with your message. That's something important to keep in mind. But yeah, there's definitely going to be some personal beliefs that go into, I don't know how to say it, but there's going to be some influence from your personal beliefs, and yeah, it's going to be hard to navigate that. But ultimately, it's the client's call, and I think you just have to do your best to kind of convey that to them.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
that makes sense. All right, I want to do a little bit of a lightning round here. I feel like I need to turn a light on. Sorry, I got dark in here. I don't want to shoot my laundry room. So let's talk about sort of best practices for specific channels. The first thing, and I mentioned this before, I'm a huge fan of email, and I think that email is sort of not given the credit that it deserves in terms of, particularly around sort of initial conversion and then customer retention. But what are some really tactics that you've seen in terms of email that have been particularly effective for driving conversions? Sydney, you want to start?
Sure. Yes. I'm loving the trend of people pairing up the subject lines and the preview text, which you can do in most email service providers, and just having fun with them. And even if you're not a millennial Gen Z woman, Google Glossier. It's an awesome direct-to-consumer makeup brand, and they are killing it in email right now. So, and just not overloading your audience. Let's stop emailing every day and do fun things. At the B2B space, I've also seen really cool stuff happening with people using their personal name and getting right to person's pain point when they email me. I got one the other day that was about HubSpot, and they were say, hey, are you struggling with your X or Y service provider with these specific issues? And I'm like, yes, I am struggling with all those issues. So yeah.
That's cool. No, I mean, I think one of the things that's really good is to think about like, yeah, could you download an ebook from Constant Contact? Sure. But another thing that could be really effective is actually looking in your email and seeing which ones you actually wanted to read, and just kind of going to go from there. Jill, you were talking before about sort of nerding out a little bit on TikTok. So like so, what are some, some things that you've seen in the content space with TikTok that have been particularly effective?
Yeah, I think the thing that is really driving it is people were bored during the pandemic, and it was a really great way to like spend time. I think I was one of those like millennials that's like, oh, I'm not getting on TikTok. It's not a fad, it's here to stay. And it has outperformed Google in terms of domains for the first time. So
explain that for someone who's not on what that means.
Yeah, so Google has ranked #1 as most visited domain for people to go to. In 2020, TikTok was #7, and within the span of like a year and a half, it's reached #1.
So more people are going to TikTok.com than going to Google.com.
Yeah.
Bananas.
Or even like Gmail, Google Maps, like Google services. So it is definitely something to not ignore as part of your marketing mix. And something that I think is really fun and different than what Instagram has to offer is Instagram, kind of portrayed this like ideal lifestyle. The grid has to look so good. TikTok is like really raw and like kind of boots on the ground style, where it doesn't have to be like a perfectly edited, curated video. A lot of times, like the ones that are going viral are just like someone filming themselves. So I think that that's the thing that we have to learn from TikTok, is that people are really valuing authenticity rather than like a super curated brand or feed or influencer. They're really enjoying the behind the scenes and the unedited versions of what people are sharing.
Mm-hmm. Hamza, do you have any B2B clients that you're working with?
Not currently, no. Okay. Yeah.
No, that's okay.
But
because someone asked a question about LinkedIn, and LinkedIn, I think, is a really again, it's almost like email, because it's been around for so long. Not people, I mean, old people like me remember this, but like LinkedIn predates Facebook by several years. So like it definitely seems like it's got, as Sydney was saying before, it's people are on LinkedIn a lot because of talking about their job changes and things like that. But I think specifically in a B2B space, LinkedIn can be a really powerful tool. Do any of the three of you have any sort of tips that about how to best practices for LinkedIn? Sydney, looks like you're nodding.
I'm always nodding. It's my active listening stance. I love LinkedIn. I am trying to get everyone at my company on it, because I think it's just such a great way to invest in building up, yourself, and documenting who you've stayed in touch with over the years and seeing what they're up to. I've noticed there's these like webinars you can do now on LinkedIn. And I've had friends that just have cool talents like sketchnoting that just throw up like a 6 p.m., sketch note session. So this is literally relates to our conversation perfectly on content marketing. Give value. So post things. I do, some blog posts. Usually every year I share my favorite books I'm reading. I just try to share things that, I wish I would have known, or something like that. So,
yeah. Anyone else want to chat in about sort of how to use LinkedIn?
Yeah, at the Gottman Institute, we also utilize LinkedIn quite a bit, and it really just depends on where your customers are and which channels they're on. You know, for Facebook and Instagram, it was mostly individuals and couples and moms. But on LinkedIn, that's where we really connected with our therapists. That's where we really got to showcase like, hey, here's an upcoming webinar or a course for you to take to get to your next training. So it was a really good opportunity to reach a different audience for us, and really kind of segment that as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I mean, it's interesting. There's a really good question from the audience from before, which was, where to go? Where should we be building our brand on social? We're currently only on Facebook and seeing less and less engagement, but don't want to get trapped in the next fad. And I think it's like what you were saying, Jill, you know, you need to figure out, you know, whoever asked that question, where is your audience? And so if your audience is on a particular platform, that's where you should, that's where you should be going. And just because you've always been on Facebook, you know, doesn't, and like this person was saying, you know, the engagement is going down. You know, that's a pretty good sign that your audience is not on Facebook as much as it used to. So it makes sense to potentially pivot. But again, like we were saying before, the best way to figure out where your customers are is to ask them. And so just, you know, sort of go from there. Let's see, there's some other good questions here. Hold on a second. Have you guys done anything or sort of seen anything about sort of augmented virtual reality, metaverse? Like, you know, what kind of conversations are you having with your clients or in your offices about what that's going to look like in terms of content?
I was just talking to the Meta for Faith team at Facebook. Now it's called Meta today,
Right.
actually. So it's interesting to hear a little bit of what they're up to. They're trying to really grasp onto this engagement, and community is what Facebook is all about. And so they're really trying to hone in on how are people forming community? How can we create like a digital component, you know, to a normal physical community, so people can stay in touch during the week if they meet weekly, but still want to have discussions using Facebook groups. WhatsApp is really blowing up right now. US is totally behind the times. It's blown up in almost every other country. So yeah, but augmented reality specifically, we've released a VR experience called basically like the last week that Jesus was alive, and we released it on Oculus. And so that's been really fun to see some of the results with it, but it's just so new. And there's still such a high barrier to entry to have like the full computer, the goggles. So I am currently very skeptical. So I don't know what you guys think.
Yeah. Are there any conversations you're having in the office, Jill or Hamza, about where this is going?
Not currently, I wouldn't say. I don't think any of our clients are, at least they're not discussing it with us about them having the possibility of entering that space. But yeah, there's a lot of conversation about what that will entail and how it's going to look like. And a lot of people seem to have high hopes for it. And a lot of people seem to have been like opposed to it and reject the idea of living in that alternate reality. But yeah, we don't have this kind of strong engagement in that regards, but yeah.
Jill, anything you got?
Yeah, we have no plans. Our marketing budget is pretty slim.
Right.
Yeah, so it's more of a bandwidth and budget issue on our end, but I think it's a really exciting opportunity. I know that BMW just launched, it's like Joyful or something, Joyous, that they'll be releasing as like their augmented reality universe with flying BMW cars and things. And then Miller Lite did a Super Bowl ad, I didn't see it, but I heard it was really interesting, where you can kind of like go in a bar and be in the metaverse and hang out. I think something that I look to that's kind of a first mover in that realm are video games. I'm not personally a player, but during like quarantine, Fortnite had a lot of musicians that would come into their virtual reality and host concerts, which was really cool, and gave musicians and artists an opportunity to still showcase without having to be in a live audience,
Yeah.
So I think that's a really fun one to look at for where that's headed, is video game world.
Yeah, one of the things that I've always found really interesting about VR in particular is VR has this ability to be essentially an empathy machine. So like, you're really sort of you literally are seeing the world through someone else's eyes. And I've seen a lot of really good nonprofits sort of explaining what they're trying to do by creating virtual reality content. And that water drink, what's the water one I talk about in class a lot, but that it can be really effective for that. So depending on what your mission is, depending on who your audience is, it could really make a good effect. We got a couple of questions from some sort of younger students, and I wanted to highlight those as we're sort of wrapping up. But so the first one is like, what tips do you recommend for students interested in working in content marketing? Hamza, why don't we start with you, since you're like the newest guy?
Fair enough. I think one thing that helped me kind of graduating and getting into this industry and this field is really, really educating yourself beyond what you just learned in college. You can start that like towards your end, like when you're close to graduating. But I think reading a lot of the Content Marketing Institute stuff that I mentioned earlier really prepped me to like kind of understand better how to engage audience. But I think another thing that really helped me is sounds cliche, but it's pretty much experience. I think working at an agency for me has taught me a lot of different tasks and different kind of working different departments, and it taught me how to use certain keywords, how to approach titles, different H2s, H3s. These are all like very like technical things that you'll learn as you like work in an industry such as like the one that I work in, producing content and appealing to people and to readers. But I think having like a lot of engagement, especially on LinkedIn, because we mentioned it. I think I found my job through LinkedIn. I happened upon one of the speakers that you brought into your class, Mark. I connected with them, and then through them, I found a job that I currently work at. And I think yeah, staying very connected, and I think there's this like idea of like having to attend networking parties and all these things to be able to get a hold of a job. But I think LinkedIn has offered that, offered this virtual space for people to be able to connect with people, different time zones, different areas. And I think, a person said +1 for working at a marketing agency. It is really such a great experience. It teaches you a lot. And obviously, whatever opportunity you get and you think is best for you, go for it. But if you have the opportunity to work at an agency, it teaches you a lot. And
That's great. And then I'm going to wrap this up with a question for Jill and Sydney. So Madeline put in the chat, how have you grown compared to the start of your career? So like, how are you how do you look at content marketing differently now than when you first started? Jill, you want to start?
Sure, yeah. I think what I've learned over the years is testing, and the key to testing is to really learn what resonates. We oftentimes insert our own opinions and bias of what we think is going to perform best and what's going to resonate best with our audience. And then you do an A/B test and you're completely off. And it just reminds you, like, you really do need to constantly be testing. And I would say that's the biggest takeaway I've learned through every single company I've been at. And then I did want to touch a little bit more on Hamza's question that he got. One of the best advice that I got when I was in school of how to get in was, if you are able to financially like make it happen, take as many free internships as you possibly can. And I took that advice, and that's really what gave me a job right out of college. Was I had multiple internships under my name, and a company took me on right out of school. And then secondly, if you're willing to show your own face, I'm not, so I use brands to get my content creation out, but just start creating it on your own. Like, you don't need a brand, or you don't need permission to be creating content. I think influencers have kind of shown us and disrupted the market in that way. And who's to say that you can't either? Just start.
Mm-hmm. That's great. No, I totally agree with that. Like, the best way to get experience is to like just put yourself out there and make experience. 100%. Sydney, how have you grown compared to the start of your career in terms of how you think about content?
Yeah, a few quick things. I think really similar to what Jill said is intuition should lead to testing, not decision making. And then data should lead to decision making, and how powerful it is. Like, you can't argue with your audience experience. And I feel like as content marketers, we should see ourselves, or future content marketers, we should see ourselves as defenders of the audience experience. And that's it. Not like of, Joe in accounting's opinion or whatever. And I feel like when I was younger in my career, I let that get to me too much when people had opinions on our content marketing. And it was so great to say, you know what, I sat down with the firefighters or whoever we were making this content for, and their face lit up. Because they're the audience. I am so incredibly biased when I walk into work every day, because we think about our brands, even if we're in the agency world, that's what we think about all the time. Our audience doesn't. They barely think about you. And so I think it's been really humbling in my career to remember that. And to also just start, I love this ancient Chinese proverb: the best time to plant a tree was 1,000 years ago. Mm-hmm. And if not, today's good. So just start trying things and don't be afraid to fail. I think I was really afraid to fail with stuff earlier in my career. And the cool thing with social media is you can get really quick feedback, iterate, try again, get some nasty feedback, and tell your audience you'll never do it again. Google what happened to Oatly last week. So yeah.
That's funny. Cool. All right. Thank you guys. So that brings us towards the end of our time together. I want to thank our wonderful panel. You guys, we're so proud of you. We're so appreciative of giving of your time and giving of your knowledge to our community here. And I think it's great. So from all of us at Western Washington University and at the marketing department, we want to thank you all for joining us today. We also want to thank the WWU Alumni Association for their partnership. And we'd like to thank those of you who chose to support the marketing department as part of this webinar. If you posted a question and it wasn't answered, I will personally follow up with you and try and help you with those particular things. And also just so you know, what you saw today is a good example of content marketing. So like, if you hear from us again, thanks for being a part of this. The recording to this webinar will be emailed to everyone that registered in the next couple of days. So please check to make sure that you receive the email for the link. If you haven't received it within a few days, feel free to reach out and we'll make sure you get that. Have a great evening. Talk to you soon. Take care.